Good morning and welcome to another video cast from Hendy Consulting, the specialist management consulting firm for the $150 billion display industry. And I've received so much good feedback about my series on the top players in the industry. I thought I'd do probably one final one now, looking at the three big companies that I would call the Chinese second tier. So please see my LinkedIn profile for the video on BOE and China Star, which are the numbers 1 and 2 in China. And then in this video, we will focus on the next three players in the Chinese display industry. So here we have the top five in China, and BOE and China Star are the top tier, with revenues 15 billion to 30 billion, and very significant innovation capabilities. And then today we'd like to discuss probably what I would consider the three companies in the second tier. I actually put Tianma first as the rook here on my chessboard because of their innovation capabilities. They're actually only for now a small medium display player, but they're actually incredibly solid and with deep R&D skills across the whole of that space. And actually, very surprisingly, they've announced plans recently for a new large gen fab called TM19, which actually takes them into the IT product space. And I actually find that a little surprising. I wonder whether they should have just stuck to their knitting. But Tianma indeed is a company I reckon with very solidly. The other two firms that are for anybody to understand are HKC, which is a large panel player, but actually has close on more capacity than AUO and Innolux. So a really important force to be reckoned with, and a key supplier to monitors and LCD TV, and then Visionox, which is a very solid second tier Flex OLED player. And I guess the point I'd like to point out with these three is that these three are very different. And I've got a slide that follows that shows that in particular. But if you want to get the theme, that HKC is basically a merchant large panel player focused on TV and monitors. It came from being a Chinese monitor brand that then went back into LCD panel making. So it's large panels at 4 Gen 8 fabs, and they've been thinking about a Gen 10. Tianma, in comparison, is very, very different and is a small panel play, but very skills. They also got into the Flex OLED business as well as LTPS LCD, and they have a very strong automotive business also. The only thing that makes their strategy sort of interesting in recent days is they've announced a new large panel fab to try and begin to move into the IT LCD products, which I found a little surprising. And then Visionox, and here I call them VX, but Visionox is a very solid second tier Flex OLED player. If you put BOE very clearly as the leader in China, then Visionox would be relative, in the second tier behind them. And I think what I want to just keep reiterating across this short slide deck is the three are very different. I used a triangle to show this, but you've got basically Visionox, Flex OLED, very solidly. That's what they do, pure play. HKC, LCD, large panel player, pure play. Some interest in white OLED, large panels for TV, but not really a device player. And then Tianma, who started off as being smartphone, automotive, and industrial, that actually I've showed them now start of moving towards the other two because they do have Flex OLED capacity, and with this new fab TM19 they're going to start having some IT products LCD capability as well. So otherwise we would have seen them all placed in the three corners, and you could argue these are three distinctly different businesses. Talking about HKC, they did try to do all the work around an IPO, and I think that didn't go through. But the reason that I find this surprising that people haven't heard of them is they've got capacity now up to about 38 million square meters, which is actually bigger than AUO and Innolux. So they're certainly a force to be reckoned with as a merchant supplier for LCD TV in particular and IT products in LCD. And they have shown some interest in working on white OLED. But if you think of them as a second tier large panel player, and they have also been considering a Gen 10 fab, but it's not clear that their financials are very strong at the moment. They did try and have an IPO listing. I'm not sure that went ahead, but low panel prices is clearly not going to help them very much. Tianma is a very solid player. They're always a company actually I've actually recognised quite solidly. They are very strong in smartphone automotive devices. They got into Flex OLED, perhaps in a slightly smaller way, but they are a very skilled small panel player and actually have shown some interest, as we would expect, in microLED, given their automotive bona fides. And then for the future, they've actually announced a Gen 8.6, I believe, large panel fab, which they want to use to then get into the IT product spaces. And I actually found that a very surprising announcement when they said that they were going to go do that, since it's really going away from their knitting from the past. And this is the way then they describe their own business, which is 2 plus 1 plus N. The N is their old industrial products stuff, where really they are actually a very solid business. The two core businesses then are smartphones and automotive, and then the future growth is this was concerned with the TM19 fab and moving into IT products. Visionox you should just see as a Flex OLED second tier player. They're aiming for 40 million shipments in 23. I'm not sure they'll make that, but they are a very solid Flex OLED second tier player. BOE is clearly 3 or 4 times larger, aiming for much bigger numbers, but Visionox is a very solid OLED only play, no LCD, OLED only play, some micro LED in China. So the summary I wanted you to get from this is you've the second tier in China. They are 3 very different businesses, and that's just how the way you should see it. So BOE and China Star, the big 2 leaders. BOE I call vanilla, following all technologies, all strategies, very large capacity. China Star, more differentiated, selective bets, focusing in the future on inkjet print, OLED, and QDEL. A more refined strategy from my point of view. And then this second tier is 3 very distinctly separate businesses doing different things. And I think if you remember this triangle of the 3 players, maybe people can get it straight in the head, the second tier in China. I hope you found that helpful.